Tonight, computer games. Gory, violent, senseless, depraved. Played alone in darkened rooms by individuals who've lost their connection to society. Should we be allowing just about anybody to pick up a colourful cardboard box from the shelf of their local game store, and minutes later, shooting someone with a gun, or using a car to run them over? Or is it time to regulate a sordid industry that has become, in the words of one concerned viewer, completely out of control? Join me tonight for a foregone conclusion special report.
For as long as I can remember, I've had a bizarre fascination with smashing things up. I blame a youth, where the most common form of motorsport I encountered, banger racing, a venue which itself has now been smashed up, Wimbledon's Plough Lane Stadium. This fascination transferred itself easily to computer games. Didn't have to buy new things, tidy away the pieces afterward. Racing games began to feature more impressive damage models. I was straight into them, trying to create ever bigger, more impressive crashes.
We've heard, and or invented, thousands of such stories. But early on, they were at least something which happened outside of the official game. That changed in 1995, with the launch of Destruction Derby. This game encouraged destruction, although destruction in limited amounts, which would not prevent you from finishing a race. For the time, depraved, crash-mad maniacs might describe it as excellent, with real-time deformation and satisfying racing, whatever they are.
I don't recall it being the longest lived of games. Tracks and races got a bit samey after a while. There wasn't really anything to smash up other than the cars, in which there was only one graphical model. I guess my flirtation with simulated automotive destruction didn't become a committed relationship until 1997.
So for those of you who are more concerned with "Here Comes the Aeroplane" than the 10 o'clock news in the late 1990s, let me tell you what this is all about. And no, it's not just me having completely lost it. There is a factual basis for all of this news nonsense. Games and media in the 1990s had a strange relationship. In some ways, the media was more welcoming. We had dedicated gaming shows, Games Master and Bad Influence, rather than TV channels which studiously ignore their upstart competition for attention. But newspapers treated games as corrupting and dangerous, and that any behaviour demonstrated within would immediately be copied by weak-willed players. An attitude which crossed over into TV news. So if I understand you correctly, you've recently been playing Parappa the Rapper, a game in which you are a dog? I think we can all draw our own conclusions from this. Thing is, like any good old moral panic, this had the opposite effect of what was intended. Coverage of games like Doom and Quarantine as violent and unsuitable made them more attractive to teenagers, busy misspending both their youth and paper round money, and spurred on developers to add even more jibs and blood to make those games feel like more of an illicit pleasure. This came to a head in 1997 with two games that deliberately courted controversy for a particular feature: the ability to run people over with your car. Grand Theft Auto and this game, Carmageddon. Grand Theft Auto may have given you combo bonuses for running over enough people in a single swerve, but with Carmageddon, it was an essential part of the game. You needed to run people over to put time on the clock. Against threats of the game being refused classification, softer censored versions were prepared. Zombies with green blood for the UK, and robots for Germany, where running over anything of humanoid nature was considered too much. I'm going to be playing that softer version here, because I'm not quite sure where YouTube is going to sit on the whole moral panic axis if I show you 20 minutes of me running people over. For all the game goaded our moral guardians, I had an entirely different controversy upon playing the demo. Why did something which looked so simple run so badly on a 486-100? A computer I was well aware could run far more impressive looking games. And why did it keep crashing with an out of memory error after just a couple of races, despite me having the box recommended 8 megabytes of memory? Of course, this was the difference between a game doing proper real-time arbitrary 3D and a game that was cheating with a lot of pre-processing and or raycasting. If only I'd known enough about graphics to realise that back in 1997. But the slow B-render based engine and slightly janky code quality were all part of the charm of Carmageddon. And once I had a 32MB K6, more than capable of handling it, I came back to Karma. While it was the censored zombie version, patches to restore the blood were ridiculously easy to find, even coming on the game CD in the case of the Splat Pack expansion. Carmageddon was a game that could be both fun and frustrating. With only 5 levels available to choose at a time, and lackluster results not doing much for your rank, it was easy to get stuck at a certain point and feel locked out of good content. It was only after slogging my way through the whole game and finding out that every track and car unlocked when you finished it that I started to enjoy it. I started to enjoy it even more once I realised there was a cheat code to decrypt and then edit the game's data files. I altered cars to have realistic performance, changed time bonuses so they added 20 minutes at a time, leaving me free to explore the maps, and generally turned it into a game where I could experiment and do everything from a realistic Sunday drive to the carnage the developers intended. When Carmageddon 2 came out, I was absolutely up for it. Bigger levels, better damage, and pedestrians modelled with 3D polygons. Who could refuse? Unfortunately, the game was a bit of a disappointment, especially given I was still saving up for Voodoo 2 and had to run it in software mode at first, where the interior camera leaves you staring at an opaque windshield. Even once I had said Voodoo 2, and the graphics bumped themselves up to 640 by 480, it was still a frustrating experience. The end of each group of races featured an enforced mission, and if you couldn't complete the often challenging objectives, you'd be stuck in the same group of 3 races forever. At least in an original Carmageddon, you could slowly grind through the ranks to unlock the next level, but here, you were stuck. Also, the car selection was a mixture of vehicles so cartoonishly ridiculous as to be unusable, and ones so mundane you may as well have been playing an ordinary driving game. There was little reason to do anything other than keep upgrading the Eagle. If you could find any of the offence power or defence power-ups, that is. Another fiddly addition to the game. And all of that assumes you could get past the missions to face any actually difficult opponents, which I couldn't. This early mission, one in which you have to jump around on rooftops destroying satellites, required a level of keyboard-driven carfu that I simply did not possess. And so until I discovered some handy cheat codes, here my game stalled, in Group 2. But it's 23 years later, and I've registry hacked my way into getting an Xbox controller to work properly. So what else can we do at this moment but challenge Timberwolf? Right. This damn mission. It just angers me. Right, okay, so I think the trick is to go off this slightly there, because I need to go up around there. I might have done a few practice runs in the hope of actually finally beating this. Maybe. Well, that was too fast. Got to collect that, and no, that was not fast enough. Come on. Don't like this mission. Okay, so we've got to go over there once we're done with this. So the trick is just to spend money on recoveries. I think. Possibly. I don't know anything about any tricks on this. Come on, car, you can do this. Yes. So we've got loads of credits, so don't need to conserve credits, we just need to conserve time, I think. We go over here. Not like that, we don't. Oh yes, I'm remembering why I hate this now. Ah, stay upright, stay upright. There we go. Try not to fall off. There's one of them around there. And then there's a ramp. So, use the recoveries to save time. Use failing to cost you extra time. No! No, 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 no. Oh. Yeah, that's not going well. Oh, no, that's wasted huge amounts of time, right? Okay. Come on, car, you can do this. Sort of see why I struggled at this at the time. It's possibly not the game, it's possibly me just being rubbish at the game. Okay, right. Go, 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 go. Think. This one, so you just go. Ah! Yes. No. Come on, car, you can do this. Okay, 6 of 11. I've got 2 minutes or so left. Right, where's the next? Oh no. Oh, it's going to recover me to a stupid place as well. Ooh. I don't have enough time for that. Possibly have enough time to go get the offence. Now this is another horrible one. This is one where you just takes ages to find this, and then it's just this bullshit over and over and over again. Get on that. Yes, we're on the roof. One attempt. Good. Good, good, good. Oh, I don't have enough time to do this. I've wasted too much time, I think. Too much time wasted early on. Oh no! This is really killing me. Your car does not want to be powerful enough. Come on, car, you can do this. No, don't fight the camera. Not enough, that's not enough, that's not enough. Do not like this game. Yeah, I guess we... Oh, we might be. Okay, let's see if we can... Oh. 2.5 decades of pain, finally over. Which idea with this? This game does not have the physics to let you do that. Well, I guess the problem there was my own ineptitude. But the mission-based structure did mean playing the game puts you up against hard progress roadblocks, rather than letting you grind slowly through until you got a better car, or some useful upgrades to open the game up again. So why, given all this, is Carmageddon 2 the entry in the series I have the most fond memories of playing? I mean, other than TDR 2000 being of a quality, where the competition for favourite vintage Carmageddon really does only have 2 entries. Well, that was because of a little thing called Plaything 2, the developer tooling, which was publicly released. Carmageddon 2 had an absolutely incredible mod scene. I talked in my Midtown Madness video about my love of driving ordinary everyday cars in games, especially ordinary everyday cars from different countries, which have a strange parallel world fascination to add to the joyful experience of simulating the mundane. Look, I made 2 videos about truck simulators. The mundane is kinda my thing, okay? As you may be able to guess from the cars shown here, Carmageddon 2's mod scene delivered in spades. In fact, not only did it deliver, it's still delivering, because people from that original mod scene are still around. And while the pace may have slowed down, the occasional bit of content is still being created. But even where it isn't, there's a lot of effort put into the digital preservation of all that work from the early 2000s. Toshiba Free is still out there, doing Carmageddon and general B-render preservation, and still maintains a version of Road Reaction 2000, a fan site that's getting on for nearly 20 years online, as of the recording of this video. In addition to its own downloads, RR2000 also offers some very nostalgic sounding links for anyone who was aware of the C2 scene at the time. CWA Board is still going. ADR still has a site. So does Econobrick. The Toxic Ragers, creators of some of the earliest mod cars, including this Bluesmobile with detachable speaker, are still just about online. And may I say, in these days of everything having disappeared, it's a little weird to browse an active website with a copyright date that starts in the 1990s. I could go on listing names, but either you know them, and you'll find them in seconds from the links in the description, or I may as well be making them up. Plus, if I don't try to mention everyone, I can spend my remaining years on this planet reading "You forgot about" comments below this video. None of which will mention Dre, the one person everyone forgets about. I am still ultimately talking about trying to find files from the early 2000s, 20 years later, so you might not find download links for every car you remember, but there is a 1.5GB pack, which includes pretty much everything ever made in one download. If you only want a few of the cars, then maybe it's a bit of a waste of bandwidth, but then so are my videos, I guess. Preservation of historical Carmageddon is an area where the future is looking even brighter. As I record this, Boon Touring has been able to open source the B-render engine with help from Argonaut. They, of course, want it primarily for Microsoft 3D Movie Maker purposes, but it raises the tantalising prospect of an open source Carmageddon. And even if that doesn't happen, there's an open source reverse engineering project called Death Race, working to make Carmageddon 1 run natively on modern systems. But back to the early 2000s, where things are grim, the skies are murky and low resolution. Carmageddon 2 mods tended to fall in 3 main categories, of which I'm only going to mention 2 here, to force you to either watch all the way to the end, or at least use the chapter skip links, driving those engagement metrics up. One is what I'd call continuation mods, further wacky and often blood-stained vehicles, in the same style as the ones the game shipped with, although often far higher detail. This includes some attempts to reimagine vehicles from Carmageddon 1 and the Splat Pack, which is also kind of the base game's aesthetic in many places, so I'd also class those as continuation mods. 2 is real cars. These, as you may have guessed from my earlier musings, are the ones I liked, with loads of detail, smashable glass, and flappable panels. Did you know Carmageddon 2 can only flap 3 things at a time? If you have 4 or more flappables, you'll need to repair your car to close them again. Plus, this was kind of the BeamNG drive of its day, at least as far as realistic destruction and 3D physics were concerned. Yes, I would often just pick a car, freeze the time with a cheat code, and drive around crashing it to see how the panels creased. If you imagine downloading all of these back in the day, you'll understand how I quickly found out Carmageddon 2 has a limit on how many add-on cars you can have. In the years since, some workarounds have been found, involving explicitly specifying opponent lists for each race. But those end up spreading AI cars all over the map, rather than lining them up neatly on the grid. Thus, whenever I tried any of those fixes, all of my power-ups became solid white, but hey, I already said janky B-render engine charm was a part of Carmageddon. Either way, looks like I need to make the hard choice of whether I'd prefer a Dodge Diplomat or a Ford Granada in my game. If only someone at THQ Nordic would give the OK for open sourcing the code, we could fix that. Hint. Hint. I could go on, and that goes both for listing add-on cars and pleading for the game code to be open sourced. But I've already made you sit through 5 minutes of me doing badly at a very easy mission. So let's move on and talk about the third category of Carmageddon 2 modding.
Banger racing. Wimbledon's Plough Lane Stadium.
Yes, even early on in the mod scene, people were already wondering if Carmageddon 2's advanced deformation model could be used to make a better banger racing game than Destruction Derby. Paul Freddie Glover released a Ford Granada banger, and a few years later, perhaps toward the end of the peak C2 mod scene years, came this total conversion: Seduction of Destruction. Until Wreckfest arrived many years later, this was perhaps the definitive banger racing experience for the PC. Attempts were made to replace it with total conversions for other games. One for NASCAR Heat, which didn't really have the deformation physics to handle it, and one for R-Factor, although that spent so much of its time in development limbo, with beta versions locked behind login walls, that I still have no idea if it ever saw a release. Perhaps that illustrates a problem with the march of technology though. To create a high quality mod for something like Assetto Corsa takes weeks of work, building a detailed model with thousands of polygons, adding textures and shaders, and tuning the physics for hours on end. Unless they're converting existing meshes from other games, most modders will manage to create only a few high quality cars throughout the entire life of a game. Models for games like Carmageddon and Midtown Madness only feature a few hundred polygons, and players were used to filling in any gaps with their imagination. There's only a small set of simple to understand physics parameters to tune. Creating a good mod wasn't easy, but it was firmly within the realm of possibility for anyone who had a little bit of 3D modelling experience to learn the tools and be able to get a car in-game. There was a delightful optimism to game modding in the early 2000s. If you were playing a popular game, like Need for Speed High Stakes, it felt like any car you could care to imagine would be created by the community eventually, and in the rare chance it wasn't, the skill required was attainable enough that you could have a decent chance of making it yourself. I think there's still a space for this aesthetic. Take the graphical fidelity of a game like Gran Turismo, or indeed Carmageddon 2, and use the power of modern computers to allow huge numbers of cars on screen and gigantic environments, while still keeping the simple models, making it possible for anyone to mod in whatever they'd like, without it appearing amateur or out of place. Just don't do it with car-based platforming between races.